CEO of the Energy Chamber, Dr. Thackwray Driver, is expressing concern about the impact the planned strike action of Petrotrin workers will have not only on the company but the country. He spoke on CTV's Good Morning Trinidad and Tobago.
CEO of the Energy Chamber, Dr. Thackwray Driver, says Petrotrin has to be very careful if the workers do strike. He said with the company's oil production still very low, it needs to attract investors, and if workers do not carry out their functions as necessary, they can lose the possible investments.
Petrotrin, it has very large debt obligations that it has to meet. Because it's a state-owned company, those are tied to the country's debt rating. So the international rating agencies will look at the ability of Petrotrin to repay the loans. If they think there's question marks about that, that puts additional debt burden onto all of the citizens of the country.
He said the country can also be downgraded by the rating agencies,
which means borrowing becomes more expensive. So in a situation where the Minister of Finance is having to borrow to keep the country, keep expenditure from the government going, that puts more cost on us. So it's a sort of a downward spiral. So I think that is a major a factor that the country has to consider, not just the fuel, but also what it means for our debt.
He noted Petrotrin is a larger earner of foreign exchange and uses a lot as well to purchase crude oil. He said there is need to improve the country's output in that regard.
Increasing domestic crude production has a big impact on the availability of foreign exchange. Now, if we're having to buy fuel internationally because we're not producing it in our refinery, that is also a negative on our foreign exchange situation. So it has these much wider implications beyond just driving and moving people around.
Dr. Driver was speaking on CTV's Good Morning Trinidad and Tobago.